The Imperial survey ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Captain Robert White stood on the bridge, watching the holographic display of yet another expansion zone. His orders were simple: mark any habitable worlds for colonization, and move on. That's when the sensors picked up something unusual: artificial signals coming from the third planet. "Sir, we're detecting radio waves, satellite communications, and primitive spaceship movements around the planet," reported his sensor officer. White leaned forward, his interest piqued. The blue-green world looked peaceful from space, but the amount of electronic chatter suggested a developing civilization. Following standard protocol, he sent a message to Imperial Command. The response came 3 days later. Establish first contact. Assess for Imperial integration. On Earth, the sudden appearance of the massive Imperial ship caused worldwide panic. Military forces went on high alert, but the alien vessel made no aggressive moves. Instead, it broadcasted a simple message in multiple Earth languages: "We come in peace. Request meeting with planetary leadership." The United Nations quickly formed an emergency council. After 2 days of heated debate, they agreed to a meeting on neutral ground, the International Space Station. Commander James Stone, a decorated military officer with diplomatic training, was chosen to represent humanity. The Imperial representative arrived in a small shuttle, flanked by 2 guards in gleaming armor. The alien looked almost human, except for his silvery skin and slightly larger eyes. He introduced himself as High Commander Vale of the Galactic Empire. "Your world shows promise," Vale said, his translator converting his words to English. "The Empire brings order and advancement to all species worthy of joining us. We offer you this opportunity." Stone listened carefully, noting the condescension in Vale's tone. "And if we wish to remain independent?" Vale's expression hardened. "Independence leads to chaos. The Empire maintains peace through unity. All civilized species understand this." "We appreciate your offer," Stone replied diplomatically, "but humanity values its freedom. We would be interested in peaceful trade and cultural exchange." "You misunderstand," Vale interrupted. "This is not a negotiation. Your technology is centuries behind ours. You have barely reached your own moon. The Empire does not recognize primitive species as equals." Stone's face remained neutral, but his voice carried a warning. "Commander Vale, don't mistake our current level of space travel for our overall capabilities. Humanity has faced many challenges and survived. We prefer peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." Vale laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Defend yourselves. With what? Your chemical rockets, your primitive projectile weapons." "With everything we have," Stone said quietly. "And I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. We're giving you a chance to avoid unnecessary conflict. Are you threatening the Empire?" Vale's voice rose in disbelief. "Your entire military wouldn't stand against a single Imperial battle fleet." Stone stood up, his expression grim. "Then send your fleet, Commander. But remember, we warned you to run." The meeting ended abruptly. As Vale's shuttle departed, Stone contacted Earth. Within hours, the United Defense Council convened an emergency session. Military leaders from every major nation gathered to prepare for what they knew was coming. "They're underestimating us," General Thompson said, addressing the council. "They see our public space program and think that's all we have. They don't know about our quantum computing advances, our drone swarms, or our automated defense systems." "Should we reveal our true capabilities?" asked another council member. "No," Thompson replied. "Let them come thinking we're helpless. Their arrogance will be their downfall." The council voted unanimously to resist any Imperial aggression. As the meeting concluded, they received word that the Imperial ship had left the solar system. 2 weeks later, a much larger Imperial fleet appeared in orbit. Their message was brief: "Submit or face conquest." Earth's response was even shorter: "We warned you." The first shots of the human Imperial War were about to be fired, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Imperial fleet hung in Earth's orbit like a swarm of metal wasps. 12 massive warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a city. Admiral Gray of the Empire smiled as he looked at the blue planet below. This would be an easy victory, just another primitive species to add to the Empire's collection. Begin the standard invasion pattern, Gray ordered. Target their largest military installations first. The Imperial ships moved into formation, their weapons charging. On their sensors, Earth's militaries appeared to be in chaos, with vessels and aircraft scrambling in random patterns. That's when everything went wrong. The first sign of trouble came when 3 Imperial ships suddenly lost power. Their shields flickered and died, leaving them vulnerable. Before Admiral Gray could process what was happening, hundreds of small objects appeared on their sensors, approaching at incredible speed. "Sir, those are missiles. But they're moving faster than anything their technology should be capable of," his sensor officer shouted. Gray watched in horror as the swarm of hypersonic missiles tore through the defenseless ships. The explosions lit up Earth's orbit like new stars. But the humans were just getting started. From hidden bases on the moon, which the Empire had dismissed as abandoned, massive rail guns opened fire. Electromagnetic projectiles accelerated to near-light speed, slammed into the Imperial fleet's formation, shattering their carefully planned attack pattern. "Impossible," Gray screamed. "They're supposed to be primitive. Where did they get this technology?" The answer came in the form of thousands of small drones, each barely larger than a human hand, swarming out from camouflaged satellites. These drones, guided by advanced AI systems that the Empire didn't know Earth possessed, attacked like mechanical insects, cutting through hull plating and disabling crucial systems. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures everywhere," the sensor officer reported, panic in his voice. "They're decloaking." Hidden Earth defense platforms emerged from their stealth fields, surrounding the Imperial fleet. Each platform bristled with weapons that the Empire's scans had failed to detect. Gray reached for the communication system. "All ships, retreat." This was a trap. But the humans had one more surprise. As the Imperial ships tried to activate their faster-than-light drives, nothing happened. Some unknown technology was blocking their escape. On Earth, in the United Defense Command Center, General Thompson watched the battle unfold. "Send the message," he ordered. Every Imperial ship received the same transmission. "We tried to warn you. This is just the beginning." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, only Admiral Gray's flagship remained, heavily damaged and powerless. A small Earth shuttle docked with the crippled vessel. Marines in powered armor suits, another technology the Empire hadn't known about, secured the bridge. As Gray was led away in handcuffs, he finally understood the truth. Humans hadn't shown their real technology during peacetime because they had never trusted anyone enough to reveal it. Centuries of preparing for possible alien threats had created a military force unlike anything the Empire had encountered. Back on Earth, the Defense Council reviewed their victory. The Empire thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had just reached space, Thompson said. They'd never guessed that our public space program was just a cover, that we'd been building our real defenses in secret for decades. "Will they come back?" another council member asked. "Of course they will," Thompson replied. "But next time, they'll be afraid. And they should be." In the following days, Earth's forces began analyzing the captured Imperial technology. Despite the Empire's advanced state, human engineers found numerous weaknesses and potential improvements. They had already started adapting their own systems to counter any future Imperial attacks. As for Admiral Gray, his interrogation revealed something that made Earth's leaders smile. The Empire had committed only a small portion of their fleet to this simple subjugation mission. They had no idea they were poking a sleeping giant. The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Humanity had revealed a fraction of their capabilities, and the Empire was about to learn why underestimating humans was the last mistake many species ever made. 3 months after Earth's first victory, the Empire was learning a painful lesson about human warfare. Their mighty fleets, used to fighting traditional space battles, found themselves facing an enemy that simply refused to play by the rules. In the Centauri system, an Imperial supply convoy moved cautiously through space. They had tripled their escort ships after losing 12 convoys in the past month. The convoy commander felt confident with 30 warships protecting his supply vessels. He was wrong. The attack began without warning. Human stealth ships, painted with light-absorbing materials and running cold to avoid detection, struck from multiple directions. They didn't target the warships. Instead, they focused on the supply ships, destroying months of resources in minutes. "Admiral, the humans, they're transmitting on our secure channels," a communications officer reported in panic. The human transmission was simple. "Thanks for the escort. You just showed us exactly where your valuable ships were." The Empire had never faced an enemy that thought this way. Humans didn't try to win through superior firepower. They won by being clever, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless in exploiting weaknesses. Back on Earth, General Thompson reviewed the latest success reports. "How are our new ships performing?" he asked his staff. "Better than expected, sir," replied Commander Wilson. "By combining our AI systems with captured Imperial tech, we've created vessels that can outmaneuver anything they have. Plus, our crews are innovating in ways the Empire can't understand." The screen showed footage from recent battles. Human ships performed maneuvers that Imperial tactical computers classified as impossible or suicidal, yet they worked. While Imperial ships relied on complex formations and traditional tactics, human vessels fought like street brawlers. Dirty, quick, and effective. But the real surprise came from an unexpected source. The Empire's own citizens were beginning to talk. "Sir, you need to see this," Wilson said, pulling up intercepted Imperial communications. "Other species in the Empire are watching us. They're sharing stories about our victories. Some of them are even starting to resist Imperial control." Thompson smiled. This was exactly what they had hoped for. Send them our new package. Across Imperial space, millions of small devices began activating, hidden in shipping containers, smuggled aboard stations, or simply floating in space. These devices broadcast a simple message in every Imperial language. "The Empire told you humans were primitive. They told you we would be easily defeated. They were wrong. We fight for our freedom, and we will help you fight for yours. The Empire is not invincible. We can prove it." The message included data from every Imperial defeat, showing how a supposedly primitive species had outfought the mighty Empire. More importantly, it showed that resistance was possible. In the Imperial capital, the High Command was facing a crisis. Reports flooded in of increased resistance activities across multiple systems. Their enemies weren't just copying human tactics, they were receiving direct help. "How are they doing this?" demanded the Imperial commander. "We control all major travel routes. We monitor all communications." His answer came when they discovered the first human drop box, a small, FTL-capable drone that could travel undetected through Imperial space, carrying information, technology, and hope to resistance fighters. Meanwhile, Earth's forces continued to push outward. They didn't try to hold territory like the Empire did. Instead, they struck hard at valuable targets and disappeared, leaving Imperial forces chasing shadows. A captured Imperial officer, when asked why they couldn't counter human tactics, explained it best. "You don't fight like a civilized species. You use deception, trickery, and tactics that no honorable military would consider." Thompson had laughed when he heard this. "Exactly," he said. "Honor is for ceremonies. In war, you do what works." As the third month of conflict ended, the Empire had lost control of 6 major systems, and dozens more were showing signs of rebellion. Their mighty military, designed to fight traditional wars against traditional enemies, found itself caught in a style of combat they had never prepared for. The Empire was learning another harsh lesson. Humans didn't just fight wars. They rewrote the rules of warfare itself, and they were teaching others to do the same. The Imperial High Council chamber, usually a place of order and ceremony, had descended into chaos. Angry voices echoed off the marble walls as military leaders argued with politicians. 6 months into the war with humanity, the Empire was facing something it had never experienced before. Fear. "How did we lose the Orion sector?" demanded High Commander Vale, the same officer who had first dismissed humans as primitive. "It was defended by our best fleet." Admiral Russell, a former Imperial commander who had defected to Earth's side, stepped forward. The humans had sent him as their representative, knowing his presence would infuriate his former masters. "You lost it," Russell said calmly, "because you still don't understand what you're fighting. Your best fleet was defeated by a human tactic they called death by 1,000 cuts." The council chamber's holographic display showed the battle. Instead of facing the Imperial fleet directly, human forces had launched thousands of tiny, automated ships. Each one was barely larger than an escape pod, but they carried powerful electromagnetic pulse weapons. The mighty Imperial warships had been reduced to drifting metal hulks, their crews forced to evacuate. "This is not how war should be fought," protested another council member. Russell laughed. "That's exactly what I used to think. But humans taught me something important. There are no rules in survival. You fight with whatever works." The crisis wasn't just military. Across Imperial space, their rigid social structure was crumbling. Humans had introduced something far more dangerous than weapons: ideas. In the Rigel system, Imperial police struggled to contain riots after humans broadcast footage of Imperial nobles living in luxury, while ordinary citizens struggled. On trade worlds, merchants began questioning why they needed Imperial permission to conduct business. Even in the military, junior officers started suggesting human-style tactics, earning the fury of their traditionalist commanders. "Sir," a young Imperial officer reported to his commander, "we've detected more human propaganda broadcasts. They're teaching people how to resist." The broadcasts were simple but effective. They showed how small groups could defeat larger forces using guerrilla tactics. They explained how to disrupt Imperial supply lines, how to communicate securely, and most importantly, how to think independently. The Empire had always maintained control through order and hierarchy. Now humans were teaching their citizens chaos and creativity. In a secret meeting room on Earth, General Thompson watched the Empire's growing internal confusion with satisfaction. "How are the new initiatives going?" he asked his staff. Commander Wilson pulled up a report. "Better than we hoped, sir. Phase 1 was showing the Empire's subjects they could resist. Phase 2 is showing them how to succeed." The screen showed images from across Imperial space. On one world, dock workers were using human-designed scrambling devices to confuse Imperial cargo manifests. On another, students were using simple chemical compounds to create smoke that blocked Imperial security sensors. Most importantly, Wilson continued, they're starting to innovate on their own. "Look at this." The display showed a group of Imperial citizens who had modified their food replicators into devices that could produce small electronic components. They were building their own resistance tools using everyday items. "The Empire's biggest weakness," Thompson said, "is that they taught their people to obey, not think. Now they're learning to think for themselves, and the Empire has no defense against that." But the humans' greatest victory came from an unexpected source. Imperial military academies, the pride of their officer corps, were facing a crisis. Young cadets, exposed to human tactical thinking, began questioning traditional Imperial doctrine. "Why do we always attack in standard formations?" one cadet had asked. "Because that is how it has always been done," his instructor replied. "The humans don't do it that way," the cadet pointed out, "and they keep winning." The instructor had no answer. As the 6th month of war ended, the Empire faced a terrible truth. They weren't just losing systems and battles. They were losing control of their own people's minds. Their perfect order was being replaced by something they feared more than any weapon: independent thought. In the imperial capital, the High Council received a message from Earth. "We warned you to run. Now your own people are learning to run with us." The Empire had started this war thinking they were facing a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, an idea that could not be killed by any weapon in their arsenal. 9 months into the war, the Empire thought they had finally understood human tactics. They had adapted their shields against EMP weapons, strengthened their cyber defenses, and trained their crews to expect the unexpected. High Command was confident they had turned the tide. Then humans revealed their true masterpiece, and the Empire learned what real terror meant. The first sign came from their largest shipyard in the Arcturus system. A routine maintenance check found something strange: tiny, silver dots floating in the coolant systems. Within hours, similar reports came from bases across Imperial space. Nanites, the Imperial scientists reported, their voices shaking. Billions of them, and they're evolving. These microscopic machines weren't just destroying Imperial technology. They were learning, adapting, and teaching each other new ways to dismantle enemy ships. Worse, they were reproducing using the very materials they consumed. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Dr. Taylor, head of the Nanotech Division, explained to General Thompson, "We released the first generation 3 months ago. They've been quietly spreading through Imperial supply lines, gathering data, and preparing. Today, they all activated at once." The screens showed Imperial shipyards falling into chaos. Warships began crumbling from the inside as nanites consumed their crucial components. Space stations went dark as their power systems were converted into more nanites. But how did they get everywhere? An Imperial commander demanded, watching his fleet disintegrate. The answer was beautifully simple. Humans had released the nanites in Imperial fuel refineries, letting the Empire's own supply network spread the infection. Every time a ship refueled, it was unknowingly carrying the seeds of its own destruction. The Empire thinks in terms of big ships and massive weapons, Thompson explained to his staff. "We think in terms of small things that multiply. One nanite isn't dangerous. A billion nanites working together can eat a battleship." But the nanites were just part of the plan. As Imperial forces frantically tried to contain the microscopic threat, humans launched Phase 2. Special Forces teams, using stolen Imperial security codes, infiltrated key facilities across Empire space. They didn't try to destroy these bases. Instead, they installed something worse: doubt. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Centauri Defense Network," an Imperial officer reported. "No, wait. We have contact, but we can't trust any readings. Everything looks normal." But that was the true genius of the human attack. Imperial commanders could no longer trust their own systems. Every sensor reading might be false. Every communication might be compromised. Every ally might be an infiltrator. The Empire had built its military on absolute certainty and perfect information. Now they had neither. In a secured bunker on Mars, Commander Wilson showed Thompson the results. The Empire's entire command structure is paralyzed. They have ships and weapons, but they're afraid to use them because they can't trust their own equipment. The screens showed Imperial fleets sitting idle, afraid to move without confirmed orders. Supply ships waited in space, unable to verify if their destination bases were still under Imperial control. But the worst blow came from within. An Imperial research team, studying captured nanites, made a devastating discovery. The technology was based on theoretical work from their own scientists, work the Empire had dismissed as too dangerous to pursue. "You mean we could have developed this ourselves?" an Imperial Council member asked in horror. "The humans didn't just outfight us," another replied. "They outthought us. They looked at technology we were afraid to use and said, why not?" As the 9th month of war ended, the Empire faced a choice: continue fighting against an enemy that had thoroughly infiltrated their society, or accept the inevitable. The humans sent one final message to the imperial capital. Your ships are infected. Your bases are compromised. Your communications are monitored. We could destroy everything you have built. But instead, we offer you one last chance. Surrender, reform, or watch your empire disintegrate from within. Remember, we warned you to run. For the first time in its 1,000-year history, the Galactic Empire knew true helplessness. They had started this war thinking they were the teachers. Instead, humanity had taught them the hardest lesson of all. True power isn't about the size of your ships. It's about the size of your ideas. 1 year into the war, the mighty Galactic Empire was crumbling. Not from the outside, but from within. The humans had accomplished something no other species had managed in 1,000 years. They had made the empire doubt itself. In the Sirius system, an entire Imperial battle group surrendered without firing a shot. Their commander, a decorated veteran of 30 years, stood on his bridge and made a simple announcement. I will not die for an empire that lied to us. The Imperial capital buzzed with emergency alarms as news of similar defections poured in. Across their territory, Imperial ships were changing sides or simply disappearing. The proud Imperial fleet, once the greatest military force in known space, was dissolving like sugar in water. How many ships have we lost today? Asked a tired Imperial Council member. It's not just ships, his aide replied. Entire systems are declaring independence. And the humans, they're helping them all. The screen showed the extent of the disaster. Human technology and tactics were spreading like wildfire. Species that the Empire had conquered centuries ago were rising up, using modified versions of Earth's weapons and strategies. On a former Imperial fortress world, reptilian warriors who had once been the Empire's most loyal soldiers were using human-designed stealth suits to strike at their former masters. In the trading hubs, amphibian merchants who had handled the Empire's finances were using Earth's encryption methods to hide rebel resources. But the most devastating blow came from the Imperial Academy itself. A group of young officers, inspired by human tactical thinking, broadcast a message that shook the Empire to its core. We were taught that strength comes from rigid order and absolute obedience. The humans showed us that true strength comes from adaptation and innovation. We choose their path. Half of the Academy's senior class deserted that day, taking with them the Empire's next generation of leaders. In Earth's command center, General Thompson watched the Empire's collapse with mixed feelings. Almost too easy, he muttered. Commander Wilson nodded. They never understood what they were really fighting. They thought this was a war about territory and resources. It was really about ideas. The screen showed the spread of human influence. Earth's military academies were now hosting officers from a dozen former Imperial worlds, teaching them not just tactics, but how to think creatively. Human engineers were helping other species modify Imperial technology, showing them how to break free from the Empire's technical control. Sir, Wilson reported, the Empire just lost their main AI research facility. Their own scientists locked out the military and declared themselves an independent research colony. Thompson smiled. And the payment we offered them. That's the beautiful part, sir. We didn't offer them anything except freedom to pursue their own research. After centuries of imperial restrictions, that was enough. The Empire had always maintained power through strict control of technology and knowledge. Now, humans were showing their subjects that innovation didn't need permission. The result was chaos. Beautiful, creative chaos that the Empire couldn't stop. In desperation, the Imperial Council tried to regain control the only way they knew how, with a show of force. They ordered their remaining loyal ships to make examples of rebellious worlds. The response came not from Earth, but from their own crews. We're not fighting our own people just because you are afraid of change, one captain broadcast. The humans were right. You should have run when you had the chance. As the first year of war drew to a close, the Empire faced a truth they had never imagined. They had lost not because they were outgunned, but because they were outthought. Their own rigid society had become their greatest weakness. The humans sent a final message to all imperial worlds. Your empire taught you that chaos was the enemy. We showed you that chaos is just another word for freedom. You can keep your old chains, or you can learn to think for yourselves. The choice is yours. Across imperial space, billions of beings looked at their chains and made their choice. The empire wasn't just losing a war. It was losing its very reason to exist. And somewhere in the imperial capital, that first arrogant commander who had dismissed humans as primitive finally understood. They had never been primitive at all. They had just been waiting for someone foolish enough to wake them up. 15 months after the first shot was fired, the war ended not with a massive battle, but with a simple message from the imperial capital. We surrender. Please stop the chaos. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years had been reduced to a fraction of its former size. The surrender ceremony, broadcast across the galaxy, was nothing like the grand spectacles the empire had once loved. Instead, it was short, simple, and broadcast from a plain conference room on Earth's International Space Station, the same place where the empire had once threatened humanity. High Commander Vale, who had started this war with his arrogance, stood before the United Earth Council. He looked older now, beaten not by weapons, but by the complete collapse of everything he had believed in. Before you dictate terms, Vale said quietly, I must know, how did you do it? How did a single species bring down the greatest empire in history? General Thompson, now speaking for Earth, smiled. We didn't bring you down, Commander. We just showed everyone else that they could think for themselves. You did the rest. The terms of surrender were surprising to many. Earth didn't demand territory or resources. Instead, they demanded something the Empire found far more frightening: change. The Empire will be reformed, Thompson announced to the galaxy. All species will have equal representation. Technology and knowledge will be freely shared, and most importantly, the right to think, innovate, and question will be protected by law. The former imperial worlds were reorganized into the Galactic Alliance of Free Species. Earth, despite its crucial role in the war, refused to take a dominant position. Instead, they established themselves as teachers and advisors, helping other species rebuild and develop. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Commander Wilson showed Thompson the latest reports. It's amazing, sir. Species that were bitter enemies under imperial rule are now working together. The Empire's former slave worlds are becoming centers of innovation. Even their old military bases are being turned into research centers. The screen showed the transformation. Imperial warships were being converted into exploration vessels. The rigid Imperial Academy had been replaced by hundreds of independent learning centers. The strictly controlled Imperial technology was being reimagined by countless minds, finally free to innovate. But perhaps the most significant change was in the former Imperial citizens themselves. People who had once waited for orders now sought their own solutions. Races that had been forced to suppress their natural talents were creating new art, technology, and ideas that surprised even the humans. Sir, Wilson reported, remember those nanites we used? The former Imperial scientists have modified them to repair environmental damage on their worlds. They're using our weapon to heal their planets. Thompson nodded. That's exactly what we hoped for. They're not just copying us anymore. They're building on what we taught them. The Empire's former capital, once a monument to rigid order, had become a bustling center of cultural exchange. Species that had once been kept separate by imperial law were mixing, sharing ideas, and creating new possibilities. In the final meeting of the Earth Defense Council, Thompson addressed his staff. Some people asked why we didn't just destroy the Empire completely. This is why. We didn't want to replace one tyranny with another. We wanted to teach the galaxy how to be free. The council chamber screen showed scenes from across the former empire. Former imperial citizens learning Earth's history of revolution and democracy, young aliens attending newly established universities, and former imperial officers teaching alongside human instructors about the importance of creative thinking. A message arrived from the Galactic Alliance's first freely elected council. You showed us that the true measure of a civilization isn't its weapons or territory, but its ability to think, adapt, and grow. We will never forget this lesson. As humanity looked to the stars, they saw not an empire of fear and control, but a galaxy of possibilities. They had won not just a war, but a future where every species could reach its full potential. And somewhere in the galaxy, a young alien child asked their parent, why did the Empire ever think they could beat the humans? The parent, a former Imperial citizen, replied, because they forgot the most important rule in the universe. Never underestimate someone who warns you to run. The war was over, but humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the Empire. It was teaching the galaxy how to be free.